Hi, it's Alan Begg here from MacMaths, and welcome to this week's lesson. The previous lesson we looked at the impact of negative numbers, but exclusively when we were talking about equations with just two numbers. So whether that was two numbers with an addition, two numbers with subtraction, two numbers with multiplication, or two numbers with division. But in this week's lesson, we want to consider what happens if there's more than two numbers in an equation with a mixture of negative numbers. Let's begin. Firstly, let's start with a little bit of revision when we're talking about equations with two numbers containing negatives. Let's start at the start. What are negative numbers? Simply, negative numbers are numbers which are less than 0. If we were to consider a number line, we can see that the negative numbers are to the left of 0 on a number line. These are the negative numbers here. These are the positive numbers. Positive numbers are to the right of the 0 on a number line. They go up in the same intervals, but on the left-hand side, they're going in negatives. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, and so on. Whereas positive numbers, +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, +6, etc. When we talk about a positive number, we don't actually include the positive sign, but +4 is actually +4, but we just don't include the plus sign. However, for this lesson, we may put the plus sign in just to clarify what we do with the signs. Let's review addition and subtraction. Let's say we've got this equation here. 2 plus 4 equals what? If we were to put the positive sign before the 4, you would see that we have 2 plus +4. And when we have a plus and a positive sign, adding a positive, that stays as an add. So adding a positive stays as an add. We have this one here, 2 plus -6. So here we have a plus and a negative. So when we're adding a negative, that changes to a subtract. So we're adding a negative number changes to subtract. So instead of 2 plus -6, we change the formula to 2 minus 6. 2 minus 6 equals -4. This example, 2 minus 6. Again, if we put the positive sign back in front of the 6 to see what we do with the minus, does it stay a minus or does it change to a positive? You can see for this one, when we have subtract a positive, it stays as a subtract. So 2 minus 6 stays as 2 minus 6, which equals negative 4. In this example, we have negative 10 subtract negative 5. So we've got subtracting a negative, subtracting a negative. So when we subtract a negative, we change it to addition. So minus 10 subtract minus 5 changes to minus 10 plus 5, which equals minus 5. Let's review multiplication and division. The rules are similar to addition and subtraction, and the rules for multiplication are the same rules as for division. 2 times 4. Let's put the plus back in. So we've got positive 2 times positive 4. So when we have a positive times a positive, the answer is positive. Any positive number times any positive number gives a positive answer. In this case, 2 times 4 equals 8. This example, negative 2 times negative 4. So here we have a negative number times a negative number. A negative number times a negative number equals a positive answer. Any negative number times any negative number equals a positive answer. In this example, negative 2 times negative 4 equals 8, positive 8, or just 8. In this example, negative 2 times positive 4. So we have a negative number times a positive number. Negative number times a positive number gives a negative answer. Any negative number times any positive number equals a negative answer. In this example, negative 2 times positive 4 equals negative 8. This example, 2 times negative 4. So here we have a positive number times a negative number equals a negative answer. So it doesn't matter which way round it is, whether it's a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive, the answer will always be negative. In this example, 2 times negative 4 equals negative 8. In the previous example, example 3, it was negative 2 times positive 4 equals negative 8. So it doesn't matter whether it's negative times positive or positive times negative, the answer will always be a negative. Let's look at division. Rules are the same. Here we have a positive number divided by a positive number. Positive number divided by a positive number equals a positive answer. Any positive number divided by any positive number equals a positive answer. In this case, 8 divided by 2 equals 4. Positive 8 divided by positive 2 equals positive 4. This example, negative 8 divided by negative 2. Here we have a negative divided by a negative. So when we have a negative divided by a negative, the answer is a positive. Any negative number divided by any other negative number, the answer will be positive. This example, example 6, negative 8 divided by negative 2 equals positive 4, or just 4. Example 7, negative 8 divided by positive 2. We have a negative divided by a positive. The answer is a negative number. Any negative number divided by any positive number, the answer will always be a negative number. This example, negative 8 divided by positive 2 equals negative 4. And example 8 is positive 8 divided by negative 2. So here we have a positive divided by a negative equals a negative answer. This is true for all formula where you have a positive number divided by a negative number, the answer will always be negative. This specific example, example 8, positive 8 divided by negative 2 equals negative 4. Whereas in example 7, we had negative 8 divided by positive 2 equaling negative 4. So it doesn't matter whether it's a positive divided by a negative or a negative divided by a positive, it'll always be a negative answer. So here's the summary. Adding a positive number sticks with addition. Adding a negative number, you change to subtraction. Subtracting a positive number stays as subtraction. And subtracting a negative number, you change it to addition. Summarizing multiplication, any positive number times any positive number gives a positive answer. Any negative number times any negative number is a positive answer. Positive number times a negative number is a negative answer. And negative number times a positive number is a negative answer. Same pattern is true for division. Any positive number divided by any positive number is a positive answer. Any negative number divided by any negative number is a positive answer. Positive number divided by a negative number is a negative answer. Negative number divided by a positive number is a negative number. So that's a wee summary there of negative numbers impacting on formula with just 2 numbers. But what happens if the formula has more than 2 numbers? Let's look at that scenario. We'll start with addition and subtraction. Remember, BODMAS applies, so we're going to start from left to right. Here's our first example. 2 plus 4 plus 10. Do we have to change any of the functions there? let's put the positive number function sign in. So we've got 2 add positive 4 add positive 10. So adding a positive stays an add, adding a positive stays an add. So we don't change the functions there. 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 plus 10 is 16. 2 plus 4 plus 10 equals 16. Adding a positive stays as an add. Example 2. 2 subtract 4 add 10. Let's put the positive signs back in. So we have 2 subtract positive 4 add positive 10. So subtracting a positive stays as subtract. Adding a positive stays as add. 2 minus 4 is minus 2 plus 10 equals positive 8, or just 8. Example 3. 2 subtract 4 subtract 10. Let's put the positive signs back in. 2 subtract positive 4. That stays as a subtract. Subtract positive 10. Subtract positive. That stays as a subtract. 2 subtract 4 is negative 2. Subtract 10, negative 12. Example 4. 2 subtract 4 add negative 10. So here we have subtract positive, so that stays as a subtract. But now we have add a negative. Add a negative changes to a subtract. So instead of 2 subtract 4 add negative 10, we rewrite it as 2 subtract 4 subtract 10. 2 subtract 4 is negative 2, subtract 10 is negative 12. Let's look at multiplication and division with more than 2 numbers. Remember, we're applying BODMAS. Example 1. 2 times 4 times 3. Let's put the positive numbers back in. Positive 2 times positive 4 times positive 3. Positive times a positive, 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times positive 3, 8 times 3 is positive 24, or just 24. Example 2. 2 times 4 times negative 3. We put the positive signs in. Positive 2 times positive 4. Positive times a positive is a positive answer. Positive 2 times positive 4 is positive 8 times negative 3. So we've got positive 8 times negative. So the answer is going to be negative. 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. Positive times a positive is a positive answer. Then the positive answer times negative answer is negative answer. Positive times negative, negative answer. 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. Next example. Negative 2 times negative 4 times negative 3. First part, negative 2 times negative 4. So we get negative times a negative equals positive. Negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. And we've got negative 3. So positive 8 times negative 3. Positive times a negative equals a negative. Positive times a negative equals a negative. 8 times negative 3 equals negative 24. Example 4. Negative 2 times negative 4 times positive 3. Let's put that positive sign in. Negative 2 times negative 4. Negative times a negative equals a positive. Negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. Positive 8 times a positive. Positive times a positive equals a positive answer. Positive 8 times positive 3 equals positive 24, or 8 times 3 equals 24. Positive times a positive equals a positive answer. Example 5. Moving on to division. Positive 32 divided by positive 4 divided by positive 2. Let's put those positive signs in. Positive divided by a positive is a positive answer. Positive 32 divided by positive 4 is positive 8. And further divide by positive 2. So we have a positive divided by a positive is a positive answer. Next example. 32 divided by 4 divided by negative 2. Let's put the positive signs in. Positive divided by a positive equals positive answer. Positive 32 divided by positive 4 is positive 8. Then we have positive 8 divided by negative 2. So a positive divided by a negative will be a negative answer. Next example. Negative 32 divided by negative 4 divided by negative 2. Negative 32 divided by negative 4 is a negative divided by a negative. Negative divided by a negative will be a positive. 32 divided by 4 is 8. Make it a positive. Negative 32 divided by negative 4 is positive 8. Positive 8 divided by negative 2. So we have a positive divided by a negative equals a negative answer. Next example. Negative 32 divided by negative 4 divided by negative 2. Negative divided by a negative equals a positive. Negative 32 divided by negative 4 is positive 8. Further divided by positive 2. Positive divided by a positive will be a positive answer. Positive 8 divided by positive 2 is positive 4. 8 divided by 2 equals 4. Let's also have a little look at powers and roots when it comes to negative numbers. Two squared. What is 2 squared? 2 squared is 2 times 2. Is that going to be a positive answer or a negative answer? Let's put the positive signs in. Positive 2 squared is positive 2 times positive 2. So we've got positive times a positive is going to be a positive answer. 2 squared is 2 times 2, which equals 4. Positive 2 times positive 2 is positive 4. positive 2 squared is positive 2 times positive 2. This example, negative 3 squared. What is negative 3 squared? Negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3. Negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3. So we have a negative times a negative. Negative times a negative equals positive. Negative 3 times negative 3 equals positive 9, or just 9. Now, be very careful. If you type in to a calculator negative 3 squared, it will give you the answer negative 9. Negative 9 is not the correct answer. The reason for this is that a calculator thinks you've typed in negative, open brackets, 3 squared, which would give negative 9. But negative 3 squared is actually negative 3 in brackets all squared. So just be careful when you're using a calculator. Calculators are good, but they're not perfect. Don't get caught squaring a negative number on a calculator and getting a negative answer. A negative number squared is always a positive answer. Let's look at the square root of 64. What is the square root of 64? Is it a negative number or is it a positive number? Square root of 64 is the same as 64 equals question mark squared. We're trying to find out question mark. 64 equals question mark squared. Question mark squared we can think of as x squared. X squared is x times x. So which number times itself equals 64? Let's put some positive signs in. Positive 64 equals positive 8 times positive 8. We've got a positive number times a positive number gives a positive answer. 8 times 8 equals 64. So the root of 64 equals positive 8, or just 8. However, there's more to it than that. Because what we've already learnt is that to get a positive answer, it doesn't have to be a positive times a positive. We can also get a positive answer if we multiply a negative by a negative. So there's two answers to the square root of 64. In exercise 3a, we saw that one of the answers was positive 8, or just 8. However, another correct answer is negative 8, because we've got a negative times a negative, negative times a negative equals a positive. We're trying to find out the answer to positive 64. Which number multiplied by itself is positive 64? In exercise 3a, we saw that positive 8 times positive 8 equals 64, but negative 8 times negative 8 also equals 64. Negative times negative equals a positive. So there's two correct answers for the square root of 64. Positive 8 is a correct answer, and negative 8 is also a correct answer. So the way that we express this is that root 64 equals plus or minus 8. Plus 8 is correct, minus 8 is correct. so we express it as plus or minus 8. However, when you're performing equations using BODMAS, you always just use the positive result. So when you're performing an equation with square roots, you always use just the positive answer. You don't use the negative answer. What about the square root of a negative number? What is the square root of negative 16? Well, that's not possible, because it's not possible to have a root of a negative number. You can only have a square root of a positive number. The square root of a negative number is not a real number. It's what's called an imaginary number. But that's for an explanation for another day. For today, just take it as read that there are not square roots of negative numbers. How did you get your head around that? Let's do a little quiz to see if you've understood. Question 1. 22 plus 7 plus 3 equals what? Let's put the positive signs in to see if we have to change the functionality of this equation. Positive 22 plus positive 7 plus positive 3. So we're adding a positive, so that stays as adding another positive, so that stays at add as well. So 22 plus 7 plus 3 just stays as 22 plus 7 plus 3. We don't have to change any of the functionality. Let's do some BODMAS. 22 plus 7 is 29, plus 3 is 32. 22 plus 7 plus 3 equals 32. 2 plus 7 plus negative 3. Let's put the positive signs in. We're starting with adding a positive, so that's going to stay as add. Then we're adding a negative. So adding a negative changes to subtracting. So we rewrite the formula. We've got 22 plus 7 subtract 3. BODMAS, 22 plus 7 is 29, minus the 3 is 26. 22 plus 7 plus negative 3 is 26. Question 3. 22 subtract 7 plus negative 3. Again, let's put the positive signs in. So we are subtracting a positive, so that stays as subtract. Then we're adding a negative. Adding a negative, that stays as subtract. So subtracting a positive stays as subtract. Adding a negative changes to subtract. So 22 subtract 7 plus negative 3 changes to 22 subtract 7 subtract 3. BODMAS, 22 subtract 7 is 15, subtract a further 3 equals 12. 22 subtract 7 plus negative 3 is 12. Question 4. 22 subtract 7 subtract negative 3. If we put the positive signs in, subtracting a positive stays as subtract. subtracting a negative changes to add. 22 subtract 7 subtract negative 3 changes to 22 subtract 7 plus 3. BODMAS, 22 subtract 7 is 15, add 3 equals 18. So 22 subtract 7 subtract negative 3 equals 18. Question 5. 22 subtract negative 7 subtract negative 3. Subtract a negative changes to add. Subtract a negative changes to add. So we'll rewrite 22 subtract negative 7 subtract negative 3 as 22 plus 7 plus 3. The double negative changes to positives. BODMAS, 22 plus 7 is 29, plus another 3 is 32. Next question. Question 6. Negative 22 subtract negative 7 subtract negative 3. Subtract a negative changes to add. Subtract a negative changes to add. So negative 22 subtract negative 7 subtract negative 3 changes to negative 22 plus 7 plus 3. So BODMAS, negative 22 plus 7 is negative 15. Negative 15 plus 3 is negative 12. Negative 22 subtract negative 7 subtract negative 3 is negative 22. Question 7. 5 times 7 times 2. Let's put those positive signs in. We have positive times positive times positive. But we'll do BODMAS. So we'll start with positive 5 times positive 7. Positive times a positive is a positive answer. Positive 5 times positive 7 is positive 35 times positive 2 is positive 70. 35 times 2 equals 70. Question 8. 5 times 7 times negative 2. Let's put the positive signs in. Positive times a positive, we know is a positive. Positive times a positive, we're going to leave that as a positive. Positive 5 times positive 7 times positive 2. We're going to do it BODMAS, so positive 5 times positive 7 is positive 35. So we've got positive times a negative, it's going to be a negative answer. Positive 35 times negative 2 equals negative 70. Question 9. 40 divided by 4 divided by negative 2. Let's put the positive signs in. Positive 40 divided by positive 4 divided by positive 2. Positive divided by a positive is going to be a positive answer. Positive 40 divided by positive 4 divided by negative 2. Let's do some BODMAS. Positive 40 divided by positive 4 equals positive 10. Positive 10 divided by minus 2 equals negative 5. Positive divided by negative, by a negative answer. Positive 10 divided by negative 2 equals negative 5. Question 10. Negative 40 divided by negative 4 times positive 5 divided by negative 2 times positive 8. Okay, so that's quite a mouthful. Let's break it down. Let's put the positive signs in. Negative 40 divided by negative 4 times positive 5 divided by negative 2 times positive 8. So the first two numbers, negative divided by a negative, that's going to be a positive. Positive times a positive, that's also going to be a positive. Then we're going to have a positive divided by a negative. Positive divided by a negative, that's going to be a negative. And then we're going to have a negative divided by a positive, which will also be a negative. But let's take that one step at a time. So, negative 40 divided by negative 4. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. Negative 40 divided by negative 4 is positive 10. Positive 10 times positive 5 divided by negative 2 times positive 8. Just do one step at a time and always show all your working. The benefits of showing all your working is if you just make a little silly mistake, you will still get marks for showing your working. If you just give the answer and the answer is wrong, you won't get any marks at all. So always show your working. Positive 10, which was the result of negative 40 divided by negative 4, positive 10 times the next number in the sequence via BOSMATs is positive 5. Positive times positive is going to be a positive answer. Positive 10 times positive 5 is positive 50. Then just write the rest of the equation back down again to show your working. The next step is positive 50 divided by negative 2. Positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative answer. Positive 50 divided by negative 2 is negative 25. So we're down to the last two numbers. Negative 25 times positive 8. Negative times a positive is going to be a negative answer. Negative 25 times positive 8, or just 8, is negative 200. Question 11. Square root of 25 times the square of 3 divided by negative 3. Square root of 25 times 3 squared divided by 3. BODMAS applies. Square root of 25 is positive 5. Remember, I said that technically the answer to the square root of 25 would be plus or minus 5. But for mathematical equations, we use the positive answer. So positive 5 times positive 9. 3 squared, positive 3 times positive 3 is positive 9 divided by negative 3. Again, left to right via BODMAS, we'll do positive 5 times positive 9 first. Positive times a positive, and then we're going to divide that answer by a negative. Positive 5 times positive 9 is 45. Positive 45. Positive 45 divided by negative 3. Positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative answer. Negative answer, positive 45 divided by negative 3 equals negative 15. Question 12 to round us off. square root of negative 256 times 5 squared times negative 10. Right, so that's a non-starter right from the off, because you can't have the square root of a negative answer. So this equation, there is no answer to this equation because it's not possible to have the square root of a negative answer. How did you get on with that? I wanted to further develop what might happen if you've got more than two numbers, one of which may be a negative. Hopefully you took some enjoyment and education from this lesson. If you did, please like it, share it, and consider subscribing. Until the next time, this is Alan Begg from McMaths signing off. See ya.